Calling to order. We'd like to respectfully request that all cell phones and electronic devices be turned off for the duration of the meeting. Will everybody please join us in a moment of silent reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Our board meetings are conducted at the Dorothy D. Call Administrative Center, Board Meeting Room, 3000 Don Allen Drive, Bensalem, Bucks County, PA, 19020. We would like, board meetings are broadcast live over Comcast Channel 28 and Verizon Fios Channel 32 and are live streamed at our district website as well as recorded for future broadcasting. And I am going to hand the meeting over to Dr. Lee.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. We appreciate your willingness and proficiency at presiding. I know our president is en route. There's a traffic issue on Bristol Road, so thanks again. And welcome, everyone, to our budget presentation number 3. You will hear from our Bensalem Athletics and Activities Director and MTSS Coordinator, Jeff Purr, about his cost center and area of impact, along with our elementary schools, middle schools budget, transportation and operations. So thank you, Mr. Steffi. You want to add anything?
No, I have a short series of slides at the very end of the presentation. I wanted to get some feedback from the board in regards to what they wanted to see as far as the preliminary final budget in regard to a tax increase, if they wanted a tax increase, no tax increase, or a partial up to the Act 1 amount. We can discuss it after our meeting, or we can discuss it at our budget, our Finance Committee meeting next month. So. Whatever the board's wishes are. Okay. So, because we have to approve that preliminary final budget at the May meeting, because by law it's required to be on record, advertised for the public to inspect for 30 days before final adoption. So I'm going to need direction from the board on what you guys want to see in that proposed final. Now, having said that, your proposed final is not your final. So you can put a tax increase, no tax increase, and you can change your mind as to what you want to do with your final budget. But I still would like to have direction from you guys on what you want to see in your proposed final budget. With that, I know Mr. Purr has an upcoming engagement. He is itching to get on here, so you're up, Jeff.
Athletic and Activities Director. This year I'm also MTSS Coordinator. Can you go to the next slide, please? So, obviously you're going to hear me say the word student. This is really loud. You're going to hear me say the word student athlete a lot tonight, and it's not lost to me that the word student is first. We're here to get a good education, but it's also not lost in our community and to our school board that this is one of the main reasons why many kids come to school. Obviously, it's a difficult time in your life when you enter high school and you're 15 and you're kind of lost in this big world, and you come to that big school on Unionville Road with 2,000 kids and a lot of hallways and a lot of rooms, and athletics and activities, including the arts, is a big purpose in people's lives. It's the reason why kids come to school. It's the reason why you're going to find out kids come to our school over the many choices they have living in the Bensalem community. So first and foremost, I want to start with community spirit. What our kids do and represent us around the state, around the county, in this area, and as they go around, that B means something. So the first thing we did when I became athletic director and worked with our principal that year was trying to brand Bensalem Athletics. We didn't have gear, we didn't have attire. So I hope this B is recognizable. It's all over the district. At least we branded Bensalem. but you'll travel the world, go on a cruise, go down the shore, go on vacation, Disney World, and people will see this bee, and it means something. And then they know Ben Salem. And whatever it's our robotics from previous years, fourth in the nation, whether it's our baseball team that got second in states, whatever's going on at Ben Salem that year, PJS, kids making over $150,000 in scholarship money at Penn State. The B means something. Oh, you're from Ben Salem, you guys are known for this. So school pride, and then this is what it teaches our students. And these are life lessons, just like athletics, being activities, being part of something. Understanding that a phrase we use a lot at Ben Salem is we play for our chest, not our back. Our chest represents Ben Salem High School. Our back represents our last name. So teaching the students that it's bigger than just you. You're part of a team, the collaboration, the teamwork, the compromise. You guys can see motivation, leadership, time management. Next slide, please. What do we have at Ben Salem? So this is something I've done with previous school boards, and then as the board kind of re-ups every year, I can take some of these slides down. Currently, we have 25 varsity sports. I will be asking to offer a 26th varsity sport at the end of this presentation. We compete in the Suburban 1 League. Suburban 1 League is the largest league in District 1. District 1 is the largest district in the state of Pennsylvania. The PIAA has 12 districts, and Suburban 1 League has 24 schools. We have over 750 athletes that compete for our sports at Ben Salem High School. Additionally, one of our major selling points on why middle school kids have a lot of choices, whether they go to Snyder and Schaefer, St. Ephraim, St. Charles, but you must live in Ben Salem. As they look at all the high schools and it's competitive, one of the main reasons they come to Ben Salem High School is because of that second bullet. We have 70 clubs minimum. It's constantly changing. Students, these young, as the mayor says, youngsters have these great ideas and constantly propose new clubs, which go before the board. You know, I was part with Mr. Nicolingo back in the day, start building bridges. That was a huge club. We have all kinds of new clubs constantly starting. But right now we have over 70 clubs and over 1,000 kids involved. So of a school of 2,000 kids, and there's 1,750 right there involved in your varsity sports and all your athletics and arts. These programs not only represent the community, but they factor in several families choosing Ben Salem High School. This leads to many kids' college and career paths. And I'm sure we've all had a conversation with our own son or daughter. What do you want to do? And they look at you like you have no idea what you just said, and you're an alien. And then they go to high school, and whether they take that elective, they join that club, they join that sport, they join that activity, and all of a sudden they find their passion, and they find their career path, and they kind of find their future. I put 250,000. That number changes every year. When I talk about PJS and a lot of our spring activities, I'll have a better idea. But this is what our students earn. And, you know, just to kind of put in perspective, you know, Division I offers full scholarships, but Division III offers academic aid. We have students that have played football for Ursinus that got $60,000 a year. So that kid alone is $240,000 over a 4-year career at Ursinus, even though it's not a full ride like Division I. So I don't care if it's Division I, II, III, JUCO, NAIA, wherever you're going. Obviously, we have tons of kids getting academic scholarships. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to, this is a slide I update every year just to kind of highlight what's going on. I'm going to kind of start at the bottom because the to be continued is spring sports just started. Spring activities are finishing up. Ms. Takmajian is our PJS, Pennsylvania Junior Academy of Sciences. We'll go with it. Sounded pretty good. Science teacher approved. They go to Penn State. Every year, kids come home with scholarships. Her best year, I think she had 9 kids take home an $8,000 scholarship to Penn State. So that's $72,000 in one program. Robotics, I talked about pre-COVID. They were 4th in the nation. And I know Mr. McKay is doing a nice job trying to kind of get that steam back going. So the to be continues. I don't have the spring sports, a lot of our spring activities. I'm not going to go through all the dashes. You've recognized them and done a great job at all our school board meetings. You just got to meet Drew Henry. A.J. Farrell named the All-State Choir. Huge deal. All-State. Aaron Sanders for the basketball team, who you'll meet next month, got Player of the Year at Courier Times. That's every school in the Courier and Intelligencer. So that's Bucks and Montgomery County, including parochial schools. You got to meet Shayna in the fall. She's just a sophomore, 2nd in the district, 4th in the state. Next slide, please. All right, so budget part. This is stuff that is not in my budget. These are requests for the board members that have been with me the full 9 years. A lot of this is repeat. Some of this stuff has been promised in years past. I understand things have changed. Some of these things are new. So these are just a couple issues that are not in my budget because they're more big ticket items. But we have an issue with our varsity softball field and our JV baseball field. It's just too dangerous for fans to sit there, and our JV baseball team and our varsity softball team or Holy Family University uses it, have a game or practice. Just too worried about a foul ball and someone not looking and getting a ball hit in the head. So I really believe we truly need nets and either those telephone poles or something, maybe a little more, cheaper at this moment to separate those two fields so it's a safety concern. The varsity baseball backstop, I believe you'll hear from facilities later on this evening, but the board was gracious enough to do some fence work around the baseball field about 6 years ago, but the backstop never got replaced. If you ever come to a varsity baseball game on Byberry Road, balls just go across Byberry Road all day long. Okay, whether it's the post office, the Orkin exterminators, and whatever other buildings are right there, cars passing by. We really, for $20,000, if we can replace that backstop and keep a bunch of those balls in our fence, it's just a safety issue. All right, and we have kids run across the street in the middle of the game to get the ball. Umpire has to have a certain amount of balls in his pocket at all times, stops the game. So this is a repeat item, but I love a new backstop for the varsity baseball field. The newest thing on the short-term list is shot clocks. There was a survey that went out to every school in Pennsylvania 2 weeks ago. Pennsylvania is looking to become the 9th state, but it's growing to have a shot clock, which is utilized in college and professional basketball. It's being proposed. New York and New Jersey are going to do it, I think, in 2023. And in Pennsylvania, we've seen the follow what New York and New Jersey do a lot. So this is probably going to pass. A shot clock would result in another game worker for all the basketball games, but we would need shot clocks put in our high school court. This would be a requirement of every school in the state of Pennsylvania. So it's 2 years out. I just want to kind of get it, out there. I'm not asking for shot clocks right now. We'd see if it gets passed, but it'd be something that would probably be put in next year's budget if this was passed by the state, which it looks like it is. The long-term cost. The first one goes back to probably before I became athletic director, but when I did become athletic director, we started the renovation of the high school. The renovation of the high school caused the 4 tennis courts that were directly behind the high school across from the maintenance area to be taken away. Okay, it's traffic pattern. It takes you to the lower lot. We have 4 tennis courts at Bensalem High School. It's seven games for a team, right? The singles and the doubles. So you're supposed to split up varsity and JV. Varsity's home, JV's away. Council Rock, Pennsbury, and Chamonix, vice versa. We have 4 courts. So many times, teams are saying, "Why don't Bensalem just come to our place?" Because we have 12 courts. The other day, I was up in Central Bucks, and Tahika Middle School, which is right near CB South, has 12 courts, a middle school. All right, it's an issue in Bensalem across the board because there's just no tennis courts in Bensalem compared to growing up here in the 80s and 90s, but we desperately need 4 tennis courts. I cannot tell you if 250 is accurate because that number is going up every year because of the rest of my presentation, the economy, inflation, the cost of materials, COVID. But we really do need 4 tennis courts. We should have a minimum of 8 when you have, and that's 2 sports. That's in the fall, the women, and it's the men's tennis in the spring. And that's just varsity, 7 matches. Scoreboards. This is the final request. It's actually not an expensive request. It's something that I wouldn't ask the board. I can budget the $10,000 myself for those fields. It's what comes with those scoreboards. It's the cost of the steel, the cost of the labor to auger the holes, make sure to run the electricity out there. Those are the costs that I couldn't tell you because it's just gone up so much in the last 18 months due to what's going on, nationwide in our economy. But I will tell you, we have beautiful facilities. All right, I've said for the last 4 years, and I stand by it. In District 1, most people think of Springford as the best facilities in District 1, and they might be, but I bet you we're number 2. And I always tell people east of Springford, which is, past King of Prussia, we have the nicest facilities in the area. Our baseball field is beautiful, softball, gym, natatorium, brand new soccer, lacrosse field, our stadium. People love our stadium, building locker rooms. It's unheard of these days, not walking back to the school for halftime, bleacher, right there. Beautiful, beautiful facilities. We don't have scoreboards. So when we play Pennsbury, the Chamonix, they all have scoreboards on a baseball, softball game. The other day I'm driving down Route 13 and Holy Ghost has a game and I can see the scores. I'm driving in my car because you can see the scoreboard from the road. So the scoreboards aren't expensive for our baseball and softball field. They're probably under 10 grand in the high 8s, low 9s. But I would need help from the school board and I guess capital improvements to pay for the construction, the steel, the labor of the scoreboards. So again, none of this is in my budget. It's just all being requested, many repeats. So here's my budget. Again, I've never asked, my budget's gone down all 9 years. We can go back in board docs. This is my 9th time presenting. The first 8 times my budget went down. Sometimes by $1, sometimes by $50, but it always has gone down. This will be the first year, unfortunately, I have to ask for a budget increase, and I'll get to why in a second. But the budget was $303,750 in the previous year, the current school year right now. I am asking for a budget of $345,150. It is a $41,000 and change increase. So let me just break down the $345,000, and I'll give you specific reasons for the $41,000 increase. Athletic training includes high school and middle school. We have a contract with NovaCare. That is the norm. We were one of the first to get a middle school trainer, although because of labor issues, it's hard this year, but that's becoming the norm in this area. $65,000. High school athletics, which is comprised of the officials, the game workers, supplies, dues and fees, entries is about $180,000, rounding up. Middle school athletics is almost $33,000. Student activities is almost $39,000, and band and clubs $30,000. The specific reasons why it's going to go up $41,000 or 12% are the 4 dashes to the top right of that slide. So our football program has not been good. And since we all live in Ben Salem, or at least I can speak for the 9 board members and Dr. Lee and myself, we all live in Ben Salem. I know there's other people in this room that do as well. I couldn't go anywhere. I food shop at Giant. We all stop at Wawa. If I ever get to the country club, and the first thing I always got beat up on the last 9 years was football. Why? When is your football team going to get some more wins? I will tell you, although I was a former basketball coach, football sets the tone for the school year. They have their first 2 games before school starts. They're in camp before kids are even coming home from summer break. Their first game is before kids even do those 1 days 9th grade, 1 days 10th to 12th grade. Their second game's Labor Day weekend. When you have a good football team, besides the school spirit, it just changes the culture at the high school. And it's something as a former basketball coach and teacher I never realized. But as athletic director, you realize, and as a former assistant principal, when your football team is better and your football team is winning, it just changes the whole culture of a high school. We did go in a different direction last year with our football program. We got a new coach. We were very successful this year compared to previous years. With that success, unfortunately, comes some costs. All right, participation rate is up, which is great, but the cost of helmets, the cost of shoulder pads, the safety concerns is gone up through the roof. Helmets alone went up $50. $50 doesn't sound like a lot, but when a helmet was $220, you're talking a little bit under 40%. And now helmets up to $280. All right, the shoulder pads, they have to get checked. Helmets get certified once a year, and they're only good for 10 years. Shoulder pads get certified every other year. I have a 5-year cycle in all uniforms. It kind of works out that the year I do football, all the other sports are not that year because football is so expensive. But to break it down, the last time we got football uniforms, we were like $19,000 and change. And I can do 3-4 sports for $19,000. Because of our increase in numbers, which again, I'm very happy about. It's fun when the football team wins. The football uniforms this year are gonna be $30,000. And sorry to the board, but this your first year is a football year. But you won't hear it for 5 years, that's all I can tell you. So the football uniforms are $30,000. That is included in my budget. That's part of $345,000. Shoulder pads, helmets. The 26th sport I would love to add, we would be the second team in Suburban 1 after Souderton to add is women's wrestling. It's not a whole lot of cost. Okay, they are kind of integrated with the men's. I do believe we would need another assistant coach. We would need some more uniforms. The biggest thing will be dues and fees. There'll be a Saturday where the men's team could be leaving at 5:45 or 6 o'clock to go to this tournament, and the women's team could be going there. And you guys got to meet Maya, and you saw the success we had this year. And from the emails I got and from the people I've spoken to, our 8th grade females are tremendous, and the number's going to go up. So we'll have at least 8 or 9. And we'll be pretty good. We'll be pretty good. So women's wrestling, and then the big one's inflation. I'm sure you heard it in the previous meetings. You're going to hear it after me. I can't control it. I wish the supplies didn't cost more money. The workers cost more money. To try to get someone to come out and do a track meet for $33 for 4 hours, the people just don't want to do it. It's not worth their time and time away from their family. As our basketball team was pretty good this year and they won a league title, more home games was more police presence, especially when it was rivalry games versus Pennsbury in the playoffs. That's 2 cops I didn't account for. You know, they're like $110 an hour, 4 hours. We can do the math, $800. All right, football team, crowds were much bigger, more police officers, increased cost. You will see there are some supplemental incomes. Football revenue, I had Ms. Rawls at the high school pull the receipts from our football games pre-COVID when we had a full season. Compared to this year with our success in a full season, we had over $7,000 more in gate sales. Basketball was $2,500. I believe that was due to the success with the league title. And if you're not aware, we have what's called the Bensalem High School Sports Association, okay, which is like a booster club. Each year they do 2 big fundraisers, a golf outing, which is June 11th, hint, hint, and designer bag bingo, which is in October or November. And both of those bring about $15,000 to athletics every year, that every penny is spent on the kids. One of the things we did with the previous golf outing was we bought what's called a gun. It's a shooting gun. It's a rebounding machine you put in it's in our main gym. Shots go up, and it keeps statistics on the kid's shot, and the ball gets passed right back to you. So that's like something I wouldn't budget for. It was like $6,000 bought from golf outing revenue, things of that nature. When our teams make states and stuff like that, to offset some of the costs, the district pays for a lot, but meals or something like that, or team sweats or celebratory jackets or something of a league title, the sports association comes in. And then a lot of stuff is like an individual basis. A kid on the track team, there's 80 kids and 1 kid had a house fire. We don't want to put it, we're not going to embarrass that kid, but, donating $500 or sending meals, or someone's dealing with, a death in a family, or someone's really sick and on hospice, send them meals. So the sports association's great. Every penny that comes in goes back to our athletes at Bensalem High School. But at the end of the day, I am asking for a $41,000 increase. So with that being said, any questions?
Yeah, real quick. You said the 12% was these 4 items here: uniforms, program, women's wrestling, and inflation. And the uniforms were about 30 grand of the 41 total. What's the football program number again?
Football program, so it depends. So I sent out about 81 helmets, and I still have not
Are the
done
helmets part of the uniforms, or that's something separate?
That's separate. That's part of the program.
So the 30 grand
uniforms is
uniforms
just a
are just the jerseys
Jersey
and
and
pants? Okay.
And just so you know, that 30,000 is 2 jerseys, 1 pant. So we wear the same color pant for home and away, and then a different color for home and away jersey. To be fair, that 30, it's not really 30 of the 41, though, to be honest with you.
That's fine. I was just trying to understand what the difference in the
Fine.
uniform and the program costs were. That's all.
I
Thanks.
know, fair enough. The program would be the helmets, shoulder pads, some of the equipment out there on Byberry Road. Thank you, though. Good question.
Hey, Jeff. Not really a question, but I'm super happy to see the women's wrestling on here. I mean,
I didn't see that coming.
in case you didn't see it coming.
Mr. Stewart beat you to it already.
So I'm super happy about it. My son coached at the middle school, so the 8 girls. I'm excited to see that, and we'll be one of 33 in the state, and we need 50 to.
Well, I'll tell you, the emails come out every day. They're pushing it. Whatever the board is pushing them, I can't remember like the acronym, but there's an acronym. It goes out to all the high schools every day. And Sauer didn't heard about Bensalem because their AD has already reached out to me, as has their head coach, which is pretty cool. So word travels fast. And we had middle schoolers qualify for states, so it's on the up and up. It's a good thing. So I know there was a question to my left.
Jeff, I'm going to contact the United States Tennis Association. There is some grant money out for facilities, so I want to see if maybe we can, qualify for something through them. So I'll CC you on that, and I'll
Thank you very
email
much. I
that to Evan
appreciate
Scrimer from USTA.
Okay, thanks.
As a tennis player, it is really, there's 7 matches, and, you have to wait. It's, it's a 7-court minimum, and, they're going to want to build 4. That's the way the construction would go. Okay.
Any questions? Well, thank you for listening, and thanks to all the previous boards. We've added lacrosse and some other sports, and it's going really well. So thank you very much for your time. Take care.
Thank you, Jeff. Next up is Ms. Sean Mark for the elementary school budgets.
Hello, good everyone. Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see all of you. We can go to the first slide here. So our budget, you're going to see, is much more simplified than the presentation you just saw from athletics. We have a per pupil allocation at the elementary level, which is divided up to cover expenses that are related to our programming at the elementary schools, and provide for various supplies, equipment, and services that benefit our students. So at the elementary level, we spend or budget for $84 per child, and that is divided across a variety of different pockets, so to speak, that I'll be reviewing in a moment. What I do want to highlight is that there are some major expenses that are not allocated within that $84. The biggest expense, which is the curriculum and instruction materials, so that is managed centrally through our curriculum or teaching and learning department. Mr. Cohen also budgets for us regarding all of the special education and gifted programming and services, and that includes curricular materials for that program as well. Instrumental music is its own department, which I also oversee for K-8 and the high school extracurricular, as well as building budgets manage the high school instrumental music expenses. We also have computer licenses and all of our various supplemental licenses that support our curriculum that is budgeted through the IT department. Facilities and maintenance are also designated to those departments, and federal money such as Title I is also in a different allocation. So the $84, we're going to break it down and show you how we distribute that money. Mrs. Fye. You can see the pot. The large majority of our money goes to general supplies. I know that's a very detailed pie chart showing you the distributions, but I think you'll find more value from the next slide, where we have so within the supply budget, there's currently $32, or I believe it's 38. We could look at the next one. But we divide that out into several categories, some of which is for regular supplies. There are some children that just cannot afford the materials that they need in order to participate in the programs. So we provide basic school supplies. And we also have things that we need to have in terms of like replenishing science kits and things like this. Then we also, within that budget, have the 5 related arts classes that are budgeted within there as well. Art, phys ed, general music, and computer class are all within the supply budget for the elementary schools. The one that is separated out is our library, and that's just by the way school code determines how we budget that money, so they have their own budgeting category. So forgive me for the very small print here, but you can see each of the 6 elementary schools. We started with the $84, and then we talked about what services and programs that we need to account for. So you can see exactly we have money set aside per pupil, and then it's also calculated by building when it's multiplied by the projected number of students we will have next September or August, and you can see how it's broken out. We do budget for repairs and maintenance. Again, that would be for small projects, not facilities-based repairs. That would be for small things like maybe the piano needs tuned, or there's an item that was broken, like a showcase or something small. We do budget for student transportations for some in-district items, like when we take the students to the high school to see the musical, or if we transport our 6th graders to Schaefer for a transition meeting. So we need some money to cover those transportation costs. Printing and binding is just copier usage, including the supplies needed to have that available, including toner and paper and so on and so forth. And then you can see in the 112610 category the 6 different pocket areas. You have the Relate Arts areas as well as the general supplies. I apologize, that was 5. We do budget for books for classroom use, and what that is not necessarily curriculum materials. They are supplemental books. So previously, before we just went through a curriculum renewal, but one of the things that we did for units of study was we would get a variety of titles that teachers could have available in their classrooms, so students could select a choice book based on their reading ability, and we would have those materials purchased in the classroom. So teachers would often request books based on student interests in the room or their readability levels, and that money was available for that. That is not our curriculum materials, as I mentioned. So you can see all the different reporting categories, how many dollars per child is allocated into each, and that is a very simplified budget compared to some of the ones that you're going to see tonight. But we have our needs pretty well met. We appreciate that our budget did go up a couple dollars per child this year, so we appreciate that, and we'll make good use of it. So, do you have any questions or anything regarding the elementary budget?
Just a comment. I really like this. This is easy to follow, and I appreciate it. Thanks.
My pleasure. So it was a team effort. I will pass on your regards to my team. All right, well, thank you for your time, ladies and gentlemen. If you have any questions or think of anything afterwards, I'm available, or you are always welcome to send me an email at any time if I can clarify anything. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Sean. Next up, we have our middle school presentation, Mr. Stock and Mr. Incalingo.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mike Stock. I'm the principal at Schaefer, and this is my sidekick, Mr. Bill Incalingo, the principal at Snyder. I was asked not to do like Mr. Perrin, bang on the podium, so we're going to step back a little bit. I can validate real quick, just as a former athletic director of Suburban One League at a neighboring school, our facilities are awesome. It is the talk of the Suburban One League and even District 1 for that fact. The facilities at the high school are top-notch. So, you know, just a little plug for Mr. Purr and what he's asking for to keep them that way and keep them up there at the top. So that's awesome. So our budget is, the good news is we're not asking for any more than we've asked for in the past. And the number's not on there. I apologize for not having a number up on that screen, but we have a per pupil allocation of $110 per pupil. That's exactly what it was last year. So our needs are being met at the middle school. You know, the numbers change based on the enrollment. So next year, projected enrollment at Schaefer, 603 students, and at Snyder, it's 483. You do the math, 603 times 110, it gets you 66,330, and then 53,130 for Snyder. And we keep it simple. It's not as complicated as you know, the budgets that you're going to see at the high school and the athletic departments. We basically spread our money into 4 areas, right? Our regular instructional programming at the middle schools, our library services. There's some money in it's called Office of the Principal. I don't really spend that money on myself. It's for like office type stuff and you know, to keep the building running. And then our nursing services. So we'll start with the first one. Again, keep it simple. You can see the numbers up there from previous year, 21-22 budget. In the regular instructional programming, you know, we have we kind of spread the money around. Student transportation. You know, when we go to the high school for certain events, we need to pay for the transportation to get our students up there. Printing and binding is, you know, self-explanatory. That's the copiers, the paper, the upkeep of our copiers. Our biggest expense is our general supplies. As you can see, that's the highest number up there. That basically gets our teachers what they need for the classroom. You know, for our STEM or our pre-engineering classes, our phys ed classes, all our arts, all our core classes. That's the money that gets what we need. Now, sometimes we will have bigger ticket items, you know, that we look to make some improvements within the building. Each year, it might be something different. The last few years, I could say at Schaefer, we've spent some money on getting rid of the old chalkboards and bringing in a company that would do, you know, put the whiteboard over the old chalkboards. And it's great. It's been a great improvement. So we've been working that in, you know, the last couple of years. So things like that, as we have, you know, that money would also, you know, maybe come out of our supplies. Sometimes we move that money around into the appropriate category as needed. And then one place we do move money to is that second supplies account, which says Office Depot next to it. That gets us stuff a little bit quicker. We have an Office Depot account where if we need, you know, something quick, we need some kind of classroom supplies. Cartridges, stuff for the printer, some paper, you know, staplers, like things of that nature. We can get that pretty quick from Office Depot. And then pretty much the same, you know, for Snyder as well. Next slide, please. School library services, we have two areas. We have money budgeted for new books, you know, get rid of some of the old materials in the library, bring in the new books. And then we also have tech fees and supplies for any technology type related items that are needed for the library. Office of the Principal. Now, a couple codes up there, as you can see, had zero budgeted in last year's budget, but then there's money in there in this year's budget. So that is simply a fix, right? Like, you know, in the past, maybe like travel expenses, you know, where if we have to go somewhere, you know, to another school, or we're visiting another school for whatever reason, if there's any travel involved, the money needs to come out of the appropriate account. And so we simply made that fix for next year's budget.
Yeah, this is, excuse me, this was a change. If you look at the elementary budgets, they'll have the same thing in the high school budgets. Our district hadn't been coding the things according to the state accounting manual. So this is a change that we've made to bring us in line with DE as far as coding the expenses to the proper accounts. Such as an example, middle school, they'll buy 4 or 5 walkie-talkies for the principal, the assistant principals, maybe a guidance counselor for when things are going wrong, they have to communicate with one another. Historically, that was always budgeted in the 1100. 1100 is supposed to be only for instructional materials. So we're just doing some housekeeping and moving. It's not a decrease or an increase, it's just allocating the money where it needs to be allocated.
Correct. Yeah, we simply move that money into those categories. Again, the number's the same, $110 per pupil allocation times the number of students comes out to be.
Right, and if you see that increase there, if you go back to your 1100, you'll see a corresponding decrease in the supplies account.
And then dues and fees. That's another account. You know, we pay dues and fees for, you know, NJHS and certain clubs and activities that we participate in. That has to come out of our dues and fees category. And I'm banging the podium. All right, next slide, please. And our nursing services, obviously, there's repairs and maintenance for equipment. For example, you know, repairing, you know, say a scale in the nurse's office, and then supplies. Obviously, supplies are much needed, as you can imagine, in a nurse's office. So that's what that account is up there for. And that's it for middle school. You have questions?
Oh, thanks for keeping it budget neutral. Thank you. Good job. That's important.
I'm curious to know, you know, printing and binding seems old to me. Maybe I'm like, are you still really printing that much stuff in school?
So, go ahead.
We use our copiers, and that's where the printing and bindings really, they just have it as a title. It's still.
So has it extrapolated down since technology's been introduced? So has it always been consistent over the years, even though nobody allegedly prints anything anymore?
No, we have the copiers that we print everything out on. It's not anything else.
So I believe that number has gone down over the years.
If you would go back 5 years ago, I'm sorry, if you go back 5 years, we approved the board approved a contract with a new vendor. We probably took about 35–40% off of our cost per copy. Our district does about 12 million copies across all the schools in this building a year. So there is a lot of copies, print jobs in all the district copiers.
Hey, John, the printing and binding, is that just an accounting code thing? Is that why we continue to use it as opposed to updating the
Yes,
terminology to
that's the
code?
terminology that's in the state accounting manual.
But I think,
I haven't signed a paper document in about 3 years, so that's why I'm asking, is there, what are we printing and binding and copying? And I understand there's probably legal stuff and you got to have paper trails and all that. I'm just curious, that's all, so I'm asking the question.
And
If technology isn't helping us, then, and we're still printing everything that we're also emailing, it's kind of, technology's not helping us. And then same thing with textbooks. I haven't seen a textbook in as long as I can remember.
yeah.
I'm sure they're still there, but do we need to renew them as frequently? I'm only asking for my curiosity. I'm not trying to be,
right.
yeah, I'm just always curious as to is technology really progressing in the way that it seems. If you got Chromebooks in one account for everybody, I haven't seen a kid with a textbook in as long as I can remember, and I'm just wondering if it's opportunity. That's all. I'm just asking.
No, you're correct. And Mr. Cohen was the first one in the district last year to start the DocuSign, and we started in the business office 2 months ago, if we remember at our business affairs meeting. So we're going slowly but surely, and I think the next progression, there's a lot of paperwork from our HR office, leave slips, things of that nature that just make sense to do DocuSign. But no, I agree with you. It's something that we can, and we are starting to utilize that, and I can see in the future our clicks going down on all of our copiers.
As long as you agree with me, I'm good. Thanks.
I think it's also, with the copying, it's teachers. They're in incessant need of worksheets. We don't have a lot of textbooks. A lot of them are online, but there are workbooks. I know with the science, and I think with math too, they have workbooks, so they aren't necessarily, but teachers use the copier a lot. Although that's one of the things I have to say I loved about virtual was not having to visit the copier.
So there are, it is decreasing. We still have a number of students who, the Chromebook is there, like some students still learn better paper pencil as well. But again, it's going down drastically over the years. And we'll still make copies for some of our programs, right? Like we'll make program booklets for our assemblies, for NJHS, for our promotion ceremony at the end of the year. So we do have a need for some paper, and it's not quite like it was years ago.
So we've started using DocuSign more often than we did a year ago or whatever.
Yeah, I'm not a DocuSign salesman, so I'm not trying to promote.
No, legitimately. My secretary and I. Look. Yeah. She. Oh, okay.
Let's try it. So, all right, good. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Up next for his first budget presentation is Mr. Russell. He's going to do the transportation department and then move right into his facilities budget.
Good evening, everyone. Next year, I like to go first instead of last, Mr. Steffi. I have children too, as Mr. Anyway, good evening, members of the board. Thank you for entertaining me here while I present my budget to you. I'm going to start with the transportation budget and an overview of the department. Just wanted to tell you that we're in the business of providing safe transportation of all of our students while remaining effective and fiscally responsible. So that's the goal for both here and the facilities department. So the first slide here just shows the amount of vehicles that we have right now currently for the bus fleet, transportation fleet, with 67 buses, 2 mini buses, 4 lift buses, 16. Mid-sized buses are 2, mini buses are 16, for a total of 89 buses. The school van count is 23, with one of those being a specialized lift van, so 24 total. Now, we did order new buses prior to my arrival. They have not been here. They're not on site yet, but I'm told that May, possibly June, they will be here. That's 20 of those. Thank you. The maintenance, grounds, and administrative fleet is presented on the next slide, and that shows a total vehicle count for grounds. VMC is a vehicle maintenance center. Food services, admin vehicles is 33. The enclosed trailers and flat trailers, 9. The amount of grounds equipment, including mowers and tractors, is 37. And then miscellaneous small engine equipment would be leaf blowers, generators, power washers, anything that's of a small engine size. And I wanted to point out that all the vehicles, trailers, rideable equipment, small engine is all serviced by our in-house, by our maintenance mechanics. So this is not a diagram, but information on the office personnel and the transportation staff. So there's an operations and transportation supervisor, myself, and then we have a transportation coordinator, which is currently interim, our route data analyst and dispatcher, our part-time dispatcher. We have a secretary in the office, and then the rest of the staff is the lead mechanic, 5 bus mechanics, again, who service all the fleet vehicles, buses, and small engines. Our drivers, we have 68 drivers assigned to current routes. We have 8 unassigned drivers and 13 substitutes. 15 van drivers, 2 of them have a CDL license as well. 12 school bus aides with 1 unassigned. Of the bus drivers listed, 2 of them are CDL testers, which is our third-party testing. And a side note, we just received our second CDL tester was very excited to report back that she, Amy Brennan, one of our drivers, took a week-long test, and she was only one of 2 people in her entire class who passed with the 100. So I was very happy about that, and so was she. So, and then we also have 4 driver trainers included with our drivers. So, next slide, please. So here's some stats for you for anybody who's new on the board, or perhaps maybe some of the board members who aren't aware. But we provide student services, transportation for 75 schools, including the 9 Bensalem schools. We service schools in Bucks, Montgomery, Philadelphia, and Burlington counties. There are currently 83 bus and van routes. Last year's reportable miles was 675,402. Last year, we transported 7,240 public and non-public students, along with 992 charter students, for a total of 8,232 students. So this gets into my the budget part of the presentation. So if you're looking there on the left-hand side is our current budgeted amount, and then in the bold and the right-hand side is the requested budget amount. So for the 300, which is the purchase professional and technical services, the budget is to remain the same at $14,554. This includes things such as mandated drug and alcohol testing, physical exams for new employees, and training. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is the 400 category, which would be the purchase property services. This includes, again, as you can see, the budget number on the left is 38,161, with a slight increase of 39,461. This includes contracted service work, such as laundry and dry cleaning for the maintenance mechanics clothing, repairs and maintenance services, which is the category that is the outsourced. I'm sorry. Work that can be done on our equipment, such as a large job that our guys can't do, would go to like Scrappies or something like that. Machining services, if required. Equipment rental, if we needed an equipment rental. And then vehicle rental, which if we needed, and then disposal services, such as tires. Thank you. The 500 or other purchases services, you see this budget number again is the same as last year's budget with $881,300. This includes printing and binding. Mr. Pettyjohn, just as a side note, we do need to print quite a lot in the transportation department, particularly for new runs. Everything is on paper in books and on the computer, but we do have to distribute that paper to our drivers, especially if they're sub-drivers or a driver covering another driver's run. So they go to in a binder. We take their run, photocopy all the information, and hand it to them. So I'm hoping for another way. I like technology, so we'll see what else we can do. This is communications, the automotive liability insurance, and any local travel that we need to have. Contracted carriers, which is our private services and contracted carriers for Bucks County IU. The 600 series supplies, you're going to see a larger increase in this, and I'll explain that in 1 minute. 711,215 for last year, up to 976,915 for this year. General supplies, meeting expenses, software licensing, vehicle fuel, which is gas and oil, and diesel fuel, supplies and fees, tech related. The increase that you see there is because of our budgeted number for anticipated fuel pricing for this year. So we were given a number by the IU, which we budgeted by, and that was their recommendation, and we were hoping that it's somewhere near that area. So that's to be determined, but that was our budgeted price for now.
Just you can see the $1.15, that's what we're paying currently. We bid this last year. We locked in for that amount of $1.15 for this current school year, and $1.51 for diesel. We're locked in until June 30th. Unfortunately, we don't think any of the contractors are going to give a locked-in price. I think it's going to be maybe some type of index plus a percentage or a flat fee on. The other thing is, this will change. Hopefully it can come down a little bit, but the bid that the IU does for the Bucks County schools is going to be in May, so we'll have a firm number. Hopefully it'll be locked in. If it's not locked in, it'll be a floating price based on some type of indice. So unfortunately, we're not going to, I don't think we're going to get a locked-in price, because I think the supplier really took a bath when he locked in these prices for us last year. Now, the one thing, we don't pay the liquid fuels tax, so that's why the prices you see at the pump, we're typically about 65 cents less than that. So.
Thank you, Mr. Steffi. Next slide is the 700 property equipment slide. Same budget as last year. We hope that we can install a new vehicle lift. We want to relocate a vehicle lift inside one of our current bays, move it up, and then we can have 2 smaller vehicles in service in that bay if necessary. And the 800 slide is the other slide, is the dues and memberships, and more importantly, the DEP tank certification at a budgeted of $500. So this is a side-by-side budget review for you all. If you take a second to look there, and you can see that there is a slight increase this year, but as said, it was anticipating a large fuel consumption and fuel bill. So, are there any questions regarding the transportation? Yes, sir.
Are we getting rid of any buses when we get the new buses in?
No, No, this year, we didn't budget for any new buses this year. The only thing we do have coming in is new vans for this year.
Yeah, we will be selling those new vans.
That's my
The
point
old
was-
vans, yeah, when we get those 20. We were hoping to get them in sooner, but, yeah, most of our vans have approximately 200,000 miles on or more, so they're sorely needed. Steve does a great job in our maintenance department, the mechanics, keeping everything running and safe. But, yeah, once we get those new ones in, we'll put those out on Municipid. And that's like a public bidding website, and we've done quite well with selling things on that Municipid as well.
Money that comes from that, where does that go to? Back
Goes
into
right
your
back
budget?
into our general, yes.
Good.
Okay, moving on. This is the facilities side of the house. I was asked a question in my interview, and my answer to it was that I wanted to be able to provide a conducive environment for learning. So keeping that in mind, I began to structure our facilities budget in the same manner. So as in the last presentation, the first few slides are going to be just some general information for you, and then I'll get into my budget presentation itself. So if you weren't aware, the overview in front of you is basically the square footages for our district with the 9 schools, the total for the 9 schools, and then broken out into each, the other buildings, the stadium, transportation center, the administration center, operations, and so our total is about 1.32 million square feet of building space. This is it says overall grounds, but this is a grounds maintenance slide for you. So we maintain approximately 300 acres of property. This includes everything from grass cutting, weed whacking, edging, tree and shrub maintenance, to field lining, mulch care, maintenance and repair of all mechanical and electrical systems, locks, painting, general maintenance, and all of our custodial cleaning services. We have approximately 20 sports fields that we maintain with those various sports listed. The 4 tennis courts that Mr. Purr wants to double on me. 16 playgrounds, 10 courtyards. That's okay. I welcome it.
Maybe I'll get you that grant. Let's see.
Let's talk. Instead, about 10 courtyards, and then we have 14 detention basins that we also have to maintain. Again, the structure for the facilities department as follows: this operations manager, operations transportation manager, assistant facility manager, a coordinator of facilities, a coordinator of custodial. There are 2 secretaries. One is a department secretary, and one does the building and rental usage coordination. There's 9 maintenance specialists, and 3 maintenance utilities employees, 6 groundskeepers, 9 head custodians, currently 52 custodial employees, and about 12 custodial subs. Next slide, please. Thank you. Some of the considerations as you're looking at the budget, there continues to be an increase in material and contract labor, supply chain issues. Has been talked about in previous presentations. They're causing longer lead times for some items. Our current state of labor shortage has affected us as we've had increased custodial overtime, and then we also have been doing more. We're ramping back up our facilities rentals from when prior to COVID. So, as in the transportation budget, the line items are all listed about the same. The current budget will be on your left, and the proposed budget's on the right. So the 300 series for purchase property and technical services. This includes the AHERA 6-month and 3-year inspections. AHERA is the Asbestos Hazard Emergency Response Act. We're required to have inspections every 6 months, and then a full inspection every 3 years. This is our indoor air quality testing, our yearly required lead testing, our weekly pool water testing, engineered and architectural services, and the SPI security services, and they provide weekend security patrols for us. The 400 purchase property services, as you can see the increase on this particular budget from 895 to 640 to 927 11. That is let me see here. That includes our laundry and linen services, our repairs and maintenance services, which is why that number jumped up. That's our contracted services. So if we have to have a contractor come out and do something that our maintenance people can't do, we noticed that we were starting to get bigger bills and more labor charges for that. So that was due to the increase there. Equipment rentals, our pest control contract. And then also the water and sewer charges and the disposal services are our trash contract. The 500 other purchased services is 154,850 last year, down to 4,350 this year. The reason for that drop is that we stopped printing. Yeah, we stopped. Yes, see, much less. Much less printing. Well, I hope to go to an all-electronic work order system, so we won't have to print those out anymore either. That was a previously included telephone services that were budgeted out of the facilities department, which were now transferred over into IT. So that's the difference there. The next slide is the supplies 600 series. 1.9 million last year, 1.9 million this year, although it's about 6,000 more, 5,000 more. This includes our general supplies for buildings, which is our maintenance, repairs, grounds upkeep, and custodial supplies. And then also our utilities, natural gas, electric, and oil, and the included supplies and fees for other technology for fiber and our GPS system. The 700 property equipment series is $867 lower budgeted this year than last year. This is to purchase a new salt spreader for one of the grounds vehicles, and then we are looking to replace a scrubber buffer, and a varnisher for this year. The 800 series is the other series, which remains the same as last year. This includes dues and fees, which is the professional memberships to PASBO, for example. This is Bucks County Board of Health annual certification, along with a reduced rate from the township, Bensalem Township, for fees related to fire alarm inspections. So there's your side-by-side comparison from last year's budget to this year, and you can see there's about $150,000 difference, which is about the $150,000 that went over to the IT department's budget. So some of our future goals to bring the board, to make the board aware, we want to look at updating our to a modern work order system, which would mean no printing, and it has a work order and preventive maintenance system. It also would include an electronic facility scheduling module, which would allow members of schools or the public to access a website and basically make a reservation and do everything right online, so that they don't have to turn the paper in as we're doing now, more paper, or less paper for that. I want to look at expanding the training for our facilities employees, all facility staff, whether it's administrative staff, custodial, or the maintenance and grounds employees, along with our office employees. I'm going to look at technology options for our maintenance staff, including putting a tablet in all of our maintenance mechanics' hands, number one, for the new work order system, but number two, that we can start a Google Drive, or a place where they can go to reference material or information from that we've gathered from equipment. So if we do a renovation project and we get a new air handling unit, and the air handling unit has a manual with it, it can be downloaded into this Google Drive, and our mechanics can go use their laptop or use their device to go see the manual right there, rather than trying to look for it. And being in facilities for a while, I can tell you that those manuals end up in somebody's office, and then eventually they can't be found. So then lastly, we're going to continue to complete our ongoing district-wide property improvements, from minor improvements to bigger projects that we have in the board in our office, as a way to continue improving the educational experience for all of our students. So, yeah. Any questions?
I got one question. All the money we set aside for special projects, where does that show up? Does it show up under general expenditures, or should it be represented here in the facilities?
If you're referring to the money that the board transferred, that goes to our capital reserve fund. That's a completely different fund. Those are for the large, different projects. So the way, this is just our general fund. This is supported by tax dollars, by our subsidies. Yeah.
Everything's supported by tax dollars, John.
You're right. Everything is supported by tax dollars. But there are two separate funds. Those large ticket items are in your capital reserve fund, your capital improvement fund. This is just your general fund. This is your ongoing recurring expenditures.
Well, I know this is departmental stuff, but where are those funds going to show up in the budget?
They don't show up. It's a completely separate fund. So those funds can't be spent without board approval. So when there is a large project that we want to put in 4 new tennis courts, it's $400,000. We would get board approval, and that would come out of the capital reserve. We don't like to budget in the general fund non-recurring large ticket items. It causes a lot of volatility within your general fund. So those types of items are budgeted separately. You want your recurring, day-to-day, year-to-year operations in your general fund, and your one-time items we put in our capital reserve.
Didn't we already earmark a lot of those funds for projects already? So that's sitting there, but it's already spent?
Yeah, I mean, it's based on that plan that we received from ICS. If you recall the presentation we provided at Business Affairs had the 5-year plan. The amount that was transferred funded the first 4 years of those projected expenditures. So you essentially do have that earmarked. What was handed out, I believe it was 2 or 3 months ago, earmarked 23, 24, 24, 25, 25, 26, and 26, 27. And it had a listing of all the individual items, what the costs were, and the costs were adjusted based on what our architect told us the inflationary increases were at this point in time. So the prices that we got from ICS, I forget what the factor was. It was 5 or 6%. So if it was 500,000 and it was 3 years out from now, we increased it 5%, 5%, and 5% to project that cost 3 years from now. Does that answer the?
Kind of.
Yeah, help me understand 2600, 600 utilities, natural gas, electricity, and oil for our buildings.
Yes, that's correct.
So there's no, like, isn't that going to triple based on? Or I mean, it just seems a little suspect that there's not a major increase there, because my home utilities went up like 1,000,000%.
Well, that's one of the benefits of what we do. We're in a consortium with a number of probably a few hundred school districts. If you recall, if you see some of our invoices, we pay a company called Provident Energy, and they bid the utilities, natural gas, electricity, for a few hundred school districts, and they bid that out prospectively for a few years in the future. So we've locked in our costs for our electricity and natural gas for a few years already. Now, in a couple years, when those contracts, those locked-in prices expire, you may see a huge increase. But right now, we're locked in. That's why you're not seeing. We're kind of locked. We're locked in like for gas. But yeah, they go out a few years into the future for us.
So are you telling us we should bank some money for that hit?
Well, I don't know what utility costs will be in a couple of years. Everything will be solar. But yeah, that's why our short-term costs haven't gone up.
Thank you.
No other questions? Thank you. have a pleasant evening.
Okay, I have several slides that I'd like to go through. We've had a couple changes that I'd like to share with the board. Unfortunately, the net effect of the changes is a slight increase. But if you recall from the first budget presentation, our total expenditures were at $168,202,523. We've had several changes. Number one, we got a projection from the vocational technical school, and fortunately, they've approved a budget that was lower than what they had advised us by $179,961. So that was a decrease. Unfortunately, our third look healthcare costs were much higher again. It's up $340,000. Having said that, the consortium, the healthcare consortium, has been a great benefit to this district. If you look at where our costs were prior to joining the consortium, I believe we're at or below that still. We've had a number of years where we've had decreases or very minimal increases. This year we've had a 15% increase. So that's reflected here. And we bumped up the number from our preliminary budget for the diesel and gasoline, another $43,000. And again, that may not be done yet. It may go up higher. I don't know until we receive those bid results from the IU. If we're able to lock in or if it's going to be on an index, we'll have a better idea once that bid is done. So you can see that the new total, the $203,000 was a net effect of those three changes. So we're at $168,405. That's a $5.3 million increase. That's 3.27%, but when you back out a lot of our ESSER funds, it's about a 2.5% increase, which in this environment I think is pretty good. Wanted to go over what it would look like with no tax increase, a 50% tax increase. When I say 50%, that's 50% of what the Act 1 level is. Act 1 for our district is 3.4%, so it's 50% of the 3.4%, not a 50% increase. So right now, if you look at our total expenditures, our total revenues, and we have in there contingency, we're short about $1.8 million. Now, the one thing, again, I always want to stress with our board, we do not spend 100% of our money. We typically spend about 99%. So at $168 million, we'll spend about $1.6, $1.7 million less, which would bring us close to even. Typically, our revenues, we typically get maybe 0.5% to 1% above what we budget. I mean, because one of the things they teach you in accountancy school is conservatism. So we're very conservative when we project our revenues. We're conservative when we project our expenditures. So this projected shortage, although it's showing a $1.8 million hit, I don't anticipate that to be your actual numbers when we look at June 30th, 2023. Having said that, if we look at a tax increase, one of the things that we've talked about is having to make up some of that ESSER funds. There's $4.5 to $4.6 million that we're using this year, next year, and the following year. So we're going to have to make that up over the next 3 years. So if you would do a tax increase, you can see you're at 100%. Your total revenues jump to $169,350,000. That would bring in a projected surplus of $1.5 million. And here is at the 50%. If you go with the 50%, it brings you to about level. Your total expenditures is 168.4. That doesn't change. Your revenues are now 167,649,000. You back out the contingency, and the projected shortfall is 156,000. So this 50% would bring you about level on paper. In reality, you're probably looking at adding to your fund balance at the end of the year. We do have some contracts, some of our larger contracts coming up, so that's something that I'd also like to take into consideration, but that's where we're at. I wanted to get direction from this group. Do you want to discuss this at Business Affairs? Do you want to poll yourselves now and let me know what what this group is comfortable? They want to see a proposed final at 0, at 50%, at 100%. I just need direction when we put that together for you guys to vote.
John, can we actually do that here since this is just informational?
Yeah, it's not an official vote. I'm sorry, I forgot my next slide. I had that. I apologize. So I have the tax rate scenario. So our current millage rate is 164.95. The median, and this is what's used for the Act 1 for the reduction that they use from the gambling funds. So if you have 17,000 properties and that's out, if you take halfway through it, 8,500. Push the button. So the median is halfway through. So there's 50% above, 50% below. It's not the average, it's the median. So the median is 22.8. If we would increase the millage at 3.4, that would bring our total mills to 170.5591. That'd be an increase of 5.6 mills. That would be an extra $127.86 to that median taxpayer. At the 1.7% or the half increase, that would be 2.8 mills or $63.93 to the median taxpayer. For the year. That's correct. Yeah. Well, you can divide it by 12 and that'd be your monthly. I mean, if you want to get it really small, you can divide it by the day. You'd probably be pennies on the day. So it was 2 years ago, yeah.
When was the last time they had an increase?
Thank you for that question. Yeah, 2020.
I'll get that right.
Over the last 5 years, the district has raised taxes halfway to the allocated Act 1 index. Is that right? I got that.
Well, we didn't do it last year because everybody was just getting back to work and coming out of COVID.
I think 2017, 2020 were 0, and 2021 was 0, sorry, and 2020 was halfway.
I know it's going to be unpopular with some of my colleagues on the board, but I'd like to see the 50% because we know we're going to be hitting a cliff eventually in 3 years when that money goes away. And just had we not been putting money aside, like when I first came on, we would have had a lot of cuts a few years ago and probably up through now. I think, well, I've said this before, if it looks like we're taking any money out of our, essentially our savings account, then we shouldn't take a 0 because I wouldn't do that in my own home. I don't think it's responsible to do it here. But like I said, I know that is not sitting well with all of my colleagues on the board. Mr. Cohen's looking at me like, yep. But I would at least like to see that one.
Okay.
I do agree with that, but what are we doing with seniors that have fixed incomes?
Well, 2 years ago, we have a senior rebate program for seniors that are on low income. They come in here, we assist them with the application, and I don't know what the exact amount was, but it was increased significantly a few years ago. I know.
Wasn't it $900?
Yeah, it was raised quite a bit. There are several other districts in the county who have a senior rebate program. Ben Salem's is by far the highest. It's higher than Neshamony's, it's higher than Bristol Township's. I don't know who else has it, but I looked at this a few years ago. The rebates that we give to our seniors is more than anybody in Bucks County. And that's
They have to
another- if that's
qualify for
something-
that, though.
They have to qualify,
They have
yeah.
to, yeah, they have to qualify, yeah.
And if that's something the board wants to. If it's something that the board wants to look at, that's, because it's not a huge ticket item, the number of people who qualify. I think it's somewhere around $70,000 a year, so that's something that the board wants to look at. We could look at increasing that or adjusting what the income limits are. But I think comparatively, we're better than the other districts.
So I'm about to say something unpopular too. I don't think we should look at anything because I think some of the budget items we have are heavy and can be reduced to make up some of the shortfall. And I also think some of our staffing is excessive in some areas that we can redirect staffing to other areas to make up for departments that are thin, that need the help, and some departments have more to help that could help balance out this budget a little bit more. So I don't think there's a need right now to do an increase, even in the couple years, because I think we can do a better job at our numbers.
We talked earlier about this, the state. We don't know how much we're going to get from the state, correct?
Not right now, no.
So what have you assumed in your numbers? How much have you assumed that we're going to use or we're going to get?
It was over $1 million.
You're using for these numbers?
Yes.
And it could be more, though.
It could be more. It could be less. I mean, I think our number is realistic based on what we've gotten in the past couple years, based on what the governor's proposing, and based on where the state is. The state has a lot of money right now. Their projections are on revenues are well above what they budgeted. So the state's in very good shape fiscally right now. So I think we're primed for a pretty healthy increase in our subsidy. And the good thing is there's school districts that have been identified as being underfunded and school districts that have been identified as being overfunded.
And we have
We've
been
been
underfunded.
identified as being underfunded. So all the additional money that goes through the fair funding formula, which benefits our district more so than a district that's been identified as being overfunded.
The formula does favor us. And
was.
from 2016 till now, we've been the beneficiary of additional funding through that formula. And I'll say, fair, it's fair. We've been underfunded for 15 years.
One question, I was at the advocacy day and I talked to somebody where they had their budget, the school budget, coincided with the state budget, which to them, it made it so much easier for them to do this. They knew what they were getting. And I know there's 4 or 5, I believe, Tomlinson's representative told me in Bucks County that do that. Is that something that's tough to do, where we can somehow change that, where our budgets coincide?
They do, if you're talking about
We don't know what we're
calendar.
getting yet from the state.
Right, yeah, no, I would love to know earlier, I think everybody would. In New Jersey, you get your firm state number in March. And your budget's due in April. But, yeah, we're not as fortunate here.
We've had years where we've received the amount we were getting in October or November. After, by law, we had to approve our budgets without knowing what they were doing. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
happened.
twice here in the last 7 years.
Now, we won't have that, but before this budget is approved, will we know then?
I think so.
I expect and
What's the history of
anticipate- Well,
Well, the history is when there's a tough budget year, it takes longer, they go to the last minute, or they go past July. I think they're not in that situation right now, so I think they're gonna have it before June 30th. I mean, there's no guarantees, but I mean, just the condition of the state finances leads me to believe that they should have a budget. I mean, they have so much excess in their reserves. They have money they have to spend by a certain deadline because they've got a lot of ESSER funds that they have deadlines to spend a lot of this money as well. So I'm hopeful that we'll get a healthy increase and hopeful that we'll have it before June 30th. More so this year than any year in the past 10 years.
And the Commonwealth revenues this year have exceeded their budget. So that helps all school districts.
Oh, thanks for clarification.
Sure.
I think, given the current market condition, it would be unrealistic to assume that we can continue to operate without an increase. I think inflation was a common word in everybody's budget, and I don't think it's a big secret that the cost of everything has gone up. And unfortunately, it hits where it counts. So I think we need to at least consider maybe even the full increase. I know that's probably really unpopular, but I think it would be at a minimum, the 1.7 increase that you're recommending here, Mr. Steffi. I just think it's the world we live in today. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is.
Just to clarify, if my recommendation would be the 3.4, to be honest with you.
Well, in that case,
I mean, it's a board decision.
in that case, stop printing, Mr. Steffi.
Well, I've been on record for many years that I am against Act One. I believe Act One, the state, has a formula that they keep, and they're looking for the taxpayers every year to get that 2 to 3%. And to stop it is just to, not raise our side of it. And our numbers aren't too bad if we don't do a tax increase. We might close to break even. I was hoping for a nominal decrease, to set a tone here to put an end to, their funding formulas that hurt us. So that's where I stand.
Do you have an idea of who or what is holding up the discussion on the funding formula? Not the fair part, not the end, but the beginning, how it's organized at the beginning.
Well, the governor presented his budget, which was for the second year in a row incredibly favorable to Bensalem Township School District. The caucuses and committees had their budget conversations, whether in our case education and appropriations. They're now recessed before the May 17th primary. Neither the House or the Senate is due back to Harrisburg until June. So the legislative calendar is my answer, and this is not unusual. I can tell you that you know that the Senate President and the Speaker of the House can reconvene each chamber if they so desire. That I don't believe that's going to happen. That's happened in the past in contentious budget years. But as we had mentioned earlier, there is a lot of money in Harrisburg, more than I've seen in my Pennsylvania tenure. The big challenge and question in Harrisburg is how much is going to be allocated and appropriated to every cost center. We're just part of it, right? We're a big part of it. We're $13 billion education in Pennsylvania of a probably close to $40 billion budget. So I hope that was helpful.
I implore the board to not raise the taxes. They're flush with some, money here.
You may remember, and I've used this language and slide every budget presentation. We are 45th out of 50 across the country in our commitment in Pennsylvania to public education. In the early 70s, roughly 50% of public education was funded through state support. We are down now to 34%. To your point, Mr. Cohen, regrettably and unfortunately, the local taxpayers have had to step up time and time again to support its community's children. It's a tough situation.
And, well, I was just asking, IDEA, was supposed to be funded, I forget what the percentage was supposed to be funded by the federal government, and I think we all know where that went. It just didn't happen. So the local taxpayers
40 was the intent when IDEA was conceived and implemented in the early to mid 70s. You're right. It now covers between 11 and 12% of our costs to support our special learners.
Would anybody else like to chime in on what they think should happen with this increase?
I'll take a quick shot at it. So we've seen all the presentations of the budget from all the different departments. Everything is great to have, not necessarily needed. With that said, as you mentioned, Eric, we can adjust some salaries. We can adjust some of the nice to have versus need to have. I'm not a fan of increasing any budget, increasing any tax for any of the residents of the Benson Township, unless we see an increase in the performance and the academic levels, which we haven't seen. The ranking of our district needs to go up a little bit if we're going to increase taxes. So if we're starting to see those things, then I'm in support of the increase. But at this point, based on what I've seen so far, not a fan of increase.
Mike, you want to weigh in?
To me, just to say right now, I'd say I don't want to see the increase, but to Eric's, I'd like to see what we could do. See if there is anything out there. See if we could, we're just looking at this budget for the third meeting here. Times are tough, and they're not getting any easier. I just think if we could, at 1.8, maybe getting more from the state, I think we need to take a look and see if we could do something, see if there's some way for us to be able to make that budget without increasing our taxes.
Spoken like a true politician. You opened with you're in favor, and you closed with you don't want to see it. So that's interesting. Thanks.
I gotta say this or it's gonna bother me. Tying our funding to how students perform on a test 3 days, like ELA PSSAs were this week for 3 through 8. Tying funding to what happens for those kids, you don't know what kids are coming in and having to deal with, and it affects how they're taking the test. You also have special ed children who are receiving services for a reason, and they are still taking the test that's on level. By definition, they aren't going to get proficient, much less advanced proficiency. So I just had to throw that out there because that's state testing on its own is a pet peeve of mine. Judging kids or teachers or administration or anyone else. Now, if our numbers start tanking and keep going down, then we need to really take a look at things. But right now, especially coming out of the pandemic, the issues with students right now is insane. What they were dealing with at home, kids that were at home that may not have been in the best situation to expect them to pass. So like I said, I just have to throw this out there or it will bother me for the rest of the night.
And that was just, sure, no, thank you for clarifying, and I do appreciate that. That was just one of the things that, I wanted to make sure that that was just one of the things that I was supporting based on what I wanted to say, that I'm not supporting the increase. So that was just one of the many things out there.
I mean, a couple years ago, we made drastic cuts. We really cut a lot. Is there places we could cut, or are we at slim pickings to cut? I mean, I guess there's always a place where,
Well, can we cut? But then over the last couple of years, we've added a bunch of stuff too. And is all that stuff we add is still necessary?
I'm not in favor cutting things that are going to hurt our kids. Programs and things that are going to hurt our
100%.
kids. I'm not in favor of that.
Nobody in this room wants to see anything that is going to hurt the kids whatsoever. You know, we're all here for the kids. It's what we're here to do. So I don't think anybody sitting here talking about being scrappy with the budget means cutting anything for the kids.
But I don't know where you would cut.
Well, that's what we got John for. That's what we pay him for.
Well, everybody would have to go back and the administrators would have to go back and sharpen their pencils and see what they could do without on their wish list.
Well, again, that's what we pay him for.
Well, I understand that, Mr. Price. I understand that. I get your point, but
I think I'd be remiss if I didn't remind everybody that for 2 years the government shut down every service that's paid for by tax dollars, including the township, parks. Every service was stifled in some way or hindered, including public schools, and everybody sat home and hid in their basement, with the exception of about 12 people. So people shouldn't be too surprised that so goes the world. Here we are, the cost of doing business has gone up. COVID changed everything, and everybody was okay with that, because if you can recall, they literally put caution tape on public parks so the kids couldn't get on swings.
right.
But guess what? Your tax dollars paid for that, but you were content to continue to pay your taxes. So they may have given out stimulus checks as scraps to everybody to keep their mouths shut and just go along with the party. But now here we are. So the roosters come home to roost, and this is the world we live in. So I would actually go back to saying, Mr. Steffi, I do support a full increase based on where we are today, because you know what? The taxpayers won't do a goddamn thing. They'll sit home and they'll take it just like they did for 2 years when we stifled every single service that they paid for, and they didn't do a damn thing about it. So I'm sorry I'm passionate about it, but you know, it's time to start either step up or, hey, enjoy the ride, because you're going to get the increase, and that's the way the world works. And they'll all come in here and cry and complain about it, but where were they for 2 years when the schools were closed and kids were isolated and locked in their rooms learning from Chromebooks and the world that we created and accepted, and they paid their taxes anyway? So I don't really feel that bad about it, honestly speaking.
Even if they weren't in the building, the teachers were still working. I was lucky enough to be
Right,
able to go
but,
into my building, but they were still open.
You can't argue that the entire environment stifled everyone's growth and development, and people were content to sit home and hide, and that's what they did.
I do agree, because salaries are going up like crazy with everybody. Everybody's salaries are going up.
Not necessarily people's salaries are not going up.
Most people out there, they can get a job today, because I can tell you right now, I can hire 10 people at my company, well, not my company now, but the company that I now work for. We can hire 10, 20 people today if I can get somebody that will just walk in the door and take an application.
I agree with that. But some people that are working, the companies can't afford to give people increases. Even though inflation's going up, not everybody's going to get increases.
Every company I know out there is giving their employees increases just to stay.
So with what Jack's saying, if inflation went to 7%, a lot of companies are giving 1.5 or 2%. So the most raises by companies don't even match what the inflation rate is.
Correct.
Still could be a major correction in these markets. That's why, I'm always worried about our taxpayers, That's why, another reason I don't want a tax increase. I don't know where we're all going here with this.
Well, the problem is we might be okay now, but I guarantee you most of us won't be sitting on this board 5 years from now when the district is grubbing for more money. A lot of us have sat here when we didn't have any money, wondering where we were going to pull it from. That's why we made all those cuts a couple years ago. We were in dire straits. So 5 years from now, we could be back in dire straits if we don't do something. Hey, listen, I'm a taxpayer too. I don't want my taxes going up either, but I want my kids educated and I want them educated well.
Yeah, I'm not saying do the full. I think we should do the 50% at least. That's where I think we should be at.
Ms. Snyder. Just put the button. Jack figured it out.
Don't forget the buttons. I'd like to see, Mr. Steffi, what the budget might look like if we do 50% or what if we do all of Act One.
That was the last slide.
Oh,
That's it right there.
oh, okay. I thought we weren't going there because it didn't move.
What would the average increase on a,
But keep in,
68? For-
but keep in mind that we have taxpayers that their school taxes are $10, $12, $14,000 a year. So theirs is not going to be $63.93.
That's not what he asked.
I'm talking about the average right now. Yeah.
I looked up, average is about 42.55 in some stats wherever you pull it from for Ben Salem. So it's at half, it's about a 1.5% increase if it's at 64.
Opinions?
I would not go any more than a half.
He's waiting for us, you and I. Okay, I feel the same way Kim does.
So, 4 no increase, 4 50%, and 1 100. So, we put it at the 50%. So that's what we'll prepare the.
No, please, John, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Sure.
this commits this board to nothing at this point, right?
These figures could change.
These are
They could-
opinions.
And they're going to change.
If we get what Governor Wolf proposed for our district, I would say, yeah, you don't have to do an increase. You're going to get 60.
They usually do get better, the numbers, just to, so the public is, sometimes you usually get down and John, and you usually come up with some really good results towards the end here. So I've been with you and usually you do. Usually you do. Got some better news coming.
Well, to that point, Mark, thanks, and hopefully, right, but there'll be some more variations, right? Our final staffing's not in, and we won't have that to you. We'll probably at the end of, May, the proposed final budget. That includes attrition, right? That includes,
That's a good point, Dr. Lee.
Right.
I apologize. This does not include attritional savings, so there will be some reduction in this budget as well.
Well, hopefully we don't see the staffing numbers the night of the budget meeting. Hopefully we see them well before then, because I would be remiss to say that I want to see them in that agenda 2 or 3 days to have time to process that. So hopefully we get it well in advance, and that's not a request.
No, I mean, we will have the budget prior to the final adoption, definitely.
Well prior.
Yes.
Well, Parks looks like it's very busy. Maybe we'll get a bigger kickback.
They stopped calling them kickbacks in the 70s, Jack.
They do pay taxes. We get $5 million a year in
The
real
only
estate.
money we get from Parks are their tax money.
Is real estate.
Anything else, guys? And gals?
Let's go Sixers. The draft. are
So we'll
great.
just go ahead and finish up this, I guess, formal meeting. That before this meeting, we did not meet in executive session, and just go over the list of upcoming board meeting dates again. April 28th, today, is the third budget work session. May 3rd, Instructional Affairs. May 10th, Personnel Committee. May 11th, Business Facilities and Technology. May 16th, Co-Curricular. May 18th, Committee of the Whole. May 19th, Public Relations and Outreach. And May 24th will be the final budget adoption. So this time we'll entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All against signify by saying nay. Abstentions. Motion carries.